Hello, everyone. My name is Ways Asmal. Welcome to another episode of Two Ways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than just climbing the corporate ladder. Now, we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on podcast by tomorrow. For those listening on Apple Podcast or on Spotify, please leave a rating for the podcast. Now, if you're joining us live, drop a one in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves, and drop a two in the comments if you're watching the recording. My guest for this week is Sandika Daya, an experienced leader in IT governance, risk, and compliance. She's also a senior non executive director on boards on various organizations that have a massive impact on South Africa. Sandika, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me here. I'm quite excited.
Let's jump straight into it. Tell us your story. Where do you come from? And maybe even outside of work, who is Sandika Daya? Give us the backstory.
I think I'll start from the very beginning. I come from very humble beginnings in Durban, in a place called Isipingo, and I didn't really have a lot of opportunities growing up. But education was one of those things that kind of set me apart, or not necessarily education, but I'd say more books and reading and just curiosity in general. I was really excited about the magic of IT and magic of technology in general. I think it's no surprise that I find myself within this industry. And yeah, fast forward, I've got like 20 years of experience within the IT industry. Right now, I'm a mom of two boys. I do a lot of things. I'm a very busy woman. I speak at a lot of events. I contribute to the industry. I sit on many boards. But that's me.
That is a very, very short summary, but okay, let's try and jump into it a little bit. And I know you said you sit on many boards, but outside of work, you're a mom of three, and on the weekends, what else do you do?
Um, I try to explore. I try to have a lot of fun and adventure. I try to do a lot of new things. Mostly, it's with my kids. I also try to just maintain connection with my friends. So very chilled, but at the same time very busy.
Okay, okay. So let's jump into your detail a little bit and your role. So, I mean, I saw it's IT governance, risk, and compliance, and that's quite a mouthful. Or describes a lot. What do you do on a daily basis?
So I describe myself as the person that needs to figure out what can go wrong in the IT function and fix it before it does. So yeah, it's the other side of it is that I'm the one that sets up a lot of the policies and the procedures within the IT division. I look at processes and look at ways to optimize processes. I look at the risks of whatever could go wrong. Look at, do we have the right controls in place? How are they working? Are there ways for us to improve that? Is there something that we need to do, any projects to raise the visibility of that? Um, Also assess compliance against things like POPI, or even our own policies. So my exposure is across all of IT. I touch everything within IT, and not the most technical person, but I'm the one that understands the frameworks and the best practices and what you need to do in order to run a successful IT department.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. Excuse the alarm that's going on in the background there. It's happening a few houses down. But I mean, 17 years in the tech industry in South Africa. I mean, you're a bit of a trailblazer. I remember in the past, there weren't as many females in the tech industry. Is that still a problem? And if it is, like, what needs to be done to fix that?
I remember even when I was studying for my degree, there wasn't a lot of women studying computer science. I studied computer science and applied maths, not a lot of women in that space. And coming into the workplace, it's very similar. I remember being, I think, about 21 years old, and I was working at one of the big four companies. We walk into clients, and I look like this little girl, surrounded by big men in a room, and you're very often made to feel like you don't actually belong there. It was very difficult because you don't often see any role models. You don't see women or women that look like you. I think now things are changing. So we do see a lot of women coming into IT, but we still don't have a lot of women in leadership positions. It's still very male dominated. And where we do see women, we often see them in spaces like GRC. You don't often find them in the IT operations, the as like network analysts. You don't see them in the infrastructure teams. Like my party trick is to take people to the infrastructure, the floor where we have all the engineers and system administrators, and I just whisper, count how many women you see, and the answer is generally zero. So even today, we don't have a lot of representation. So I'm quite passionate about looking at uh, identifying the next generation of women, helping them understand that there's a career in technology and there's a career for anyone, no matter what their interests are. And I think being open about some of the challenges and the obstacles we face, because by talking about it, we can actually change things and make things better and make people want to actually be in the space.
You mentioned most of them in GRC. For the audience, what does GRC mean?
So GRC is governance, risk, and compliance. So you would often find women in the non-technical spaces. I don't like to say that we are not technical. We are technical. We're technical in our fields. I don't think you'll find anyone that understands the frameworks and the best practices as well as we would. But it's generally not the database administrator. It's not the system administrator. They're not the one doing the patching. They're not the one that is serving standby hours to keep the systems up and running. That's where we're seeing them lacking, and we're also not seeing women in the leadership spaces too, as CIOs and heads of IT.
Okay, okay. I was going through your profile on LinkedIn, and your education list is such a powerful read. Like, I mean, it's so long, I can't list it here. There's just too many. But which one do you think helped you the most, and why?
I actually think so. There's two, right? One is by degree. I always say no one can take my degree away from me. That's my BSc in computer science and applied maths. I think when all else fails, especially when I was younger, there'd be a lot of people that would question whether I actually belong in the space that I do. And I think the fact that I've got this degree in computer science, that says a lot. I'm not coming outside of IT. I actually understand the fundamentals of IT, and that's why I belong here. The other one that has helped me a lot is my CISA certification. So that's the Certified Information Systems Auditor. Now, that is a certification that is just as hectic as my 3-year degree. Uh, and it teaches you everything in IT. And it's the one thing that the one qualification or certification that has helped me probably land all the jobs that I have. It's the one that I look back on, and every other certification sees that as a base of my knowledge and my experience. In order to be CISA certified, you have to pass an exam for, the content is about this thick in a book, and you have to have a certain number of years of experience, these 5 years of experience within specific domains. So you'd have to prove your IT governance experience, your risk management, your information security, all of those technical levels. You have to actually have someone certify that you have all of that experience before you get that certification. So that's those two for me, definitely.
Okay, okay. For the audience, we'll be responding to questions towards the end, so please add your questions to the comment section so that we don't miss them. So now I noticed that you are a non-executive director on some powerful organizations, from South African Weather Service to the South African Qualifications Authority, or SAQA, South African Social Security Agency, SASSA. That's huge. And then the South African Institute of Government Auditors. How did you get into the non-executive director space with such uh, companies that have such a large impact on the country?
So I think it's about having it's about setting your career goals. I think that I, I was very fortunate to join one of the big four after completing my degree. And what that has taught me is that I've never been the person that's sitting behind a desk and doing the actual work. I've always been the one that is advising and guiding on what should be done within the organization. With that, I've held many roles within IT audits. And then that obviously led to IT governance, risk, and compliance. So it's very much oversight functions. I've always had the ability to then have a bird's eye view of the entire organization. So I can see, so whilst many people may be focused just on what they are doing, I can see the impact of this area that it has on every other area. Um, I also realized that I'm quite good at this, like the oversight and advising and understanding things from a governance perspective, but also understanding IT end to end. And I was exposed to the work that we do, how it ends up at the board level. What I also noticed is that there's not a lot of tech people sitting on boards. So when there are decisions that need to be made or risks that need to be considered, we always look at the business strategy in the absence of technology. That's how it's always been seen. And so I've been thinking about how do I actually get onto these boards if I feel like I'm good at this. So this is a question I get asked a lot, and it's been a lot of hard work. I was actually talking to someone today about how I started with my professional association with ISACA, the one that I got my CISA certification from. I remember working Saturday mornings, um, just to serve on that organization, working there. I had two kids under 3 at the time, and I worked Saturdays, I worked evenings, um, just to gain that experience. I gained a lot of experience through volunteering, and then I just started applying. I just started applying for roles. I got a lot of non-paid roles just to give me that experience. Remember that I felt that I had the theoretical knowledge, so I understand things like King 4 because it's part of what we do from an IT governance perspective. But I had to prove that I have the experience in order for someone to hire me. So a lot of that was non-paid for until I got to a position where I kept applying for roles, and eventually I got the first one. And I think the first one was for SAQA, the Qualifications Authority. That was more from needing me from an IT expertise perspective, to sit on the Information and Information Technology Committee. That lends very well in terms of what I do. So you're being presented with what has the organization done from an IT perspective over the past quarter. And then I can guide them on, oh, this is how we could improve. This is what we could do. The next one came in, and the next one, until I've been serving on like audit and risk committees. And I also think that a lot of these organizations are very close to my heart. So if we look at organizations like SASA, when I sit there, I'm very well aware of the fact that my role is to protect the funds of the most vulnerable individuals in South Africa. So how do I do that? And I do that by looking at the information that's coming through to the board and saying, do we have the right cybersecurity controls? Do we have the right strategies in place? Are we moving innovatively? And then and then there is the South African Weather Services, where I do serve as a full board member, where we look at things holistically across the organization. So not necessarily there just from a technology perspective, but I think that technology, some of my skills from innovation and digital transformation comes in, and it helps plug a gap that I think most organizations don't necessarily have in terms of that, the lacking of the skills expertise. But also, I think we can't get away from the fact that I am female and I am young, well, relatively young in terms of the profile. So that also brings unique perspectives in the board so that we don't lead down the path of the corporate governance failures that we've seen in the past.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. Well, let's say there's someone watching who's looking for advice. They want to emulate you, or they also want to become a non-executive director in whatever role they're in now. What advice do you have for them? Where should they start?
So I think they should they should do what I did. Look for these opportunities to learn and gain experience. So look for a nonprofit organization that they are aware of. For me, I started with a professional association. Not many people might have a professional association that they belong to. If you can't find it, I used to Google. I would sit in bed with putting my kid to sleep, and I would Google every day for vacancies for non-executive directors, and I would look for it and I would find it. But I think also it's very important to speak about our goals. And when you talk to people, you may realize that opportunities exist. So I am not one of those individuals that have had opportunities just land on my lap. I felt like I have had to work for it, but there are a lot of people that do get these opportunities. And it comes from networking and it comes from speaking to people. So I'm not necessarily within the circles of non executive directors, but the more you speak about something, you may realize actually there's an opportunity somewhere that you can help out with. And so my advice would be speak about it, talk about it to anyone that you come across. You never know when someone is aware of an opportunity and they're able to assist you with it. But put in the hard work, put in the time, try and gain that experience, even if you're not getting paid for it. Because once you do get an opportunity, you have something to back you up. And then when you get onto the board, actually do a lot of research to figure out how can I be effective in my role? Because it's as if you're joining a new career all over again, like you're starting all over again, right? How do you make sure that you are effective? How can you learn? How can you leverage off other people around you? Sometimes the most powerful thing is to just be quiet and actually see what other people are doing, so that you understand how to navigate through this. But the other thing is just to do as much work as possible, even if you're not getting paid for it. Make sure that when you get into that role, that you can do the best possible job, because your reputation will also speak for itself. And your reputation is what will get you the next roles.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I noticed something also that you joined most of your boards around a similar time, within like a year or two of each other. Do you think there was a catalyst in your career, like a specific course or specific realization that pushed you into that realm?
I think it was a combination of things. So I think it was an intention. I had an intention. So it wasn't uh but none of these roles were handed to me or just came to me by luck. So it was an intention that I set around 2020, 2019, around there, to say I want to sit on these boards, and how do I get there? Um so so that led me to then say, how can I find the opportunities to volunteer? The once I gained that experience, I think the when I started applying for it, I got greater levels of success because I had some sort of experience. The other could potentially be, well, I was going to say it could have been my master's, but I think I got my master's in 2022. So maybe not my master's. So I think maybe it's probably the intention that I set for myself and the work that I put in.
Okay, that makes sense. I think we've covered a lot in terms of your tech background, your non-executive background, which is one of the main things, the two main things that I wanted to cover. But are there any last few words from you, or anything we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know?
Yeah, I think what I've also realized quite late in my career is the power of networking. And I've been in situations when in my early 20s where we would attend these networking events. But because I was fortunate to be in an audit firm, and there's a lot of young people that join in at the same time, and you have friends. When you go to these networking events, you tend to stick to your friends. And I don't think that I networked very well. I think I was able to make friends very easily. But what do we get out of it? Like, if you have to actually think about every single conference you go to, every single event that you go to, what did you get out of it? Was it just knowledge? Was it just meeting people? Or did you get any opportunities from it? Um, that has actually helped me now over the years, where I've actually learned how to network effectively to unlock a lot of opportunities. So I remember also at some point in my career saying, I want to speak at events. And it would be very difficult. Again, I had to work very hard for it. Like I would try, I would reach out to people saying, how can I get in? How can I do this? That didn't really help. I would then actually talk to event organizers and say, can I speak? This is what I'd like to pitch. And very often it wasn't well received. Fast forward to now, I don't apply for speaking opportunities anymore. Somebody calls me and says, I want you to speak at this event. And that has come as a result of networking. It's come as a result of just being able to build a brand and meet people, like minded people, and actually show some sort of value that you are bringing without expecting anything in return. So think of it like the work that I did on boards before I got paid to do it. It's like I was there to help a startup, or I was there to assist with the governance of the professional association, not thinking that I'm going to get anything from it, but just doing the best job to make sure that I leave this place better than I found it. But through all of that, I was able to meet different people and show additional value, keep showing incremental value. So the point that a lot of the opportunities that I get now, whether it's speaking opportunities or further networking opportunities, roles that I may be interested in applying for, a lot of them come to me. So somebody says, I can see your value. I appreciate your value. And we get to a stage where everybody's contributing to the society of just creating value for the benefit of the greater good. So that's something that I'm pretty passionate about at the moment. And I think I've done a really good job of networking very well, not just within the IT spaces, but even across industry and across um, various segments. And it's also decided this year that I want to actually like run my own sessions. So previously I'd get approached to speak at a lot of events and talk about technical things, because that's what the event is about. But there's a lot of I think softer skills or non-technical things that young people actually need to learn, and particularly around like building a brand. How but we know that we need to do it, but how do you do it? Like networking, how do you network? And it's only once you actually walk into these circles where people do it effectively that you learn, because actually there's a trick that they do, or there's a hack that you do, and if you replicate the same thing, you're able to do it. So I've seen that it's become a lot of these questions come from like a mentoring perspective. People want to know how do I go about doing it, and I tell them. So now I've actually this year been running master classes. So I had one a few months ago, last year, end of last year, on how to build a personal brand, practical tips to do it. And I'm running one on the 1st of March on how to network. So actually telling people, when you go into an event, what do you do? How do you find events? How do you network in a digital age? Um, and I think the power of networking is to just be able to showcase what you do and be able to find like-minded individuals and unlock further opportunities. It's very different to what we've normally thought of success in the traditional, career ladder.
And I mean, it's a good point that you mentioned there. Basically, the ability to network or the opportunity to network is one of the few things that are in your control. You don't need a specific qualification. You don't have to study anything. You just need to practice. So yeah, I think thanks for sharing that, and I think that's a good way for the show to end. The show has been live on YouTube and should be available on podcast by tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube and you feel that it's added value, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Sandika, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, everyone.